Hello everybody, it's me Troy and I'm back again with another video. Okay, so now I am here to do a March Mystery Madness update. And I think I hear that storm coming. Ooh Lord. Okay, so per my last video on my TBR, I'm going to share some of the books that I did read and did not read so far. I did put up a copy of Yankee, Doodle Dead by Carolyn G. Hart. This is the first book that I tried to read and probably got all the way to maybe the last 100 pages, and I was just like, I don't know. So this is book number, I don't even know what number it is, in her Death on Demand series following Annie and Max Darling. These mysteries are, I think they're cozies, but I've always said they're like a step above cozies. They're a little bit more intricate when it comes to character, the richness of characters, intricate when it comes to plotting. And you can tell off the bat that Carolyn G. Hart, back off the bat from the series as a whole, that Carolyn G. Hart knows mysteries and she loves mysteries because she references a lot within each of her books. To the point where sometimes I'm scribbling down quickly, like, oh, here's a mystery I never heard of, and let me see if I can investigate this, which the list is so endless. But in this particular book, the main protagonist, Annie, she's on the board of the board of library, the library director board, and there's this very cantankerous, veteran gentleman who is kind of bigoted in a lot of ways, racist in a lot of ways, but, there's an issue going on within their small community, a contentious issue that leads to him being murdered during a 4th of July celebration, and then that of course is where Annie and her husband Max Darling, they go into investigating who could be the culprit within their community to have committed this crime, despite all those egregious characteristics of this murdered victim. Still got to stand with the dead. I always say, nobody can make a difference if they're gone. Nobody can make a change if they're gone. Anyway, the issue I think I have here with this particular story is that, number one, since I started reading this series probably back in 2018, as I do love them, but things changed for me in terms of cozies, and I haven't picked up a book within this series since 2023. So by the time I got here, although I was very excited to read this book, very excited to reintroduce myself to these characters and go back further reading within this series, I don't even know if it's so much that I was not interested or if it was just a matter of timing, because although I did plod along all the way to probably about, like I said, maybe I had 100 pages left. At some point I was just kind of not interested, and I knew that I had a hunger for something else. So unfortunately, Yankee Doodle Dead was kind of mid for me. I can't give it a conclusive yay or nay. Although I did love one of my shining bits when it comes to the series, which is in the form of Annie's dialogue with several individuals within her community, including Max. What we call here, she has a smart mouth, is something that I do enjoy about these books. And even so much so in this particular book, she was kind of quote unquote working on that. I think that some people may not like Annie. Some readers may not like Annie, but yeah, she's a tough one sometimes. But Yankee Doodle Dead, yeah. I think really what I left with, having somewhat finished this book, was that I might have to just leave the series at where it is. That's essentially what I came with. I might have to just leave the series where it is and just continue to move on to things that I'm much more excited about. But I do have the follow-up book, which is actually right here. I knew I seen it. It's stuck in there real good. Oh my God. It's called White Elephant Dead. So I think that what I'm going to do is, working on intentionals for 2026, is I'm going to give the follow-up book a chance. And if that doesn't work, then I'm going to decide, because this is the first time I ever went past this, with this Yankee Doodle Dead. Never completed a book or one of these books in the series, but if this one doesn't work, then I think I'm just gonna go ahead and hang up the Carolyn G. Hart Death on Demand series, and that'll be perfectly fine. So after I attempted to read that, I did fully read The Liquid Eye of the Moon by Uchenna Awoke, which is a Nigerian author that I brought up I finished this book not too long ago. So categorically, this book I found in the mystery section of Barnes and Noble, but it is probably not a mystery in like the traditional publishing sense. But it has to do with this young African boy in this small Nigerian village who is caught up. His family is caught up in the caste system, where either you're up within it or you're below. But his dilemma is interesting because between his mother and his father is much more of a traditionalist when it comes to religion. So his father believes in sort of the folkiness of their particular community. I guess you can say there's a term for it that I want to use, but I don't want to use it incorrectly. Let's just say what is the complete opposite of his mother, who is, at the beginning of the book, she's a Catholic. So there's that dichotomy between, his much more folky remedies, sense, and believing in the Orishas and the gods and such, and then how much more Catholic sensibilities. But because of what his father believes, and because of what his father's history is when it comes to his family history, believing in such, they are placed in the lowest caste of this particular village because his father does put in a claim to be the village head after the current village head passes away. And in order of age, his father is rightfully supposed to be in that place, but the village does not confirm him as such. So our main protagonist, what happens with him is because he has such a hunger to erase his family's being at the lowestness of the caste system, where all of his own personal aspirations of going to school and getting an education and getting a good job and being able to pull his family out of this slum in which they live within, he gets into this dilemma where the story launches into this coming of age story where he is growing up and going into various different directions in terms of trying to find how can he raise his family up out of this lower portion of the caste system, considering all of his aspirations are ditched the minute the other village person gets confirmed as the village chief. I absolutely love this book. From top to bottom, I love this book. It took me a minute to warm into kind of like the direction, but once I really got into it, I loved it. And I think that the primary set of things that made this book such a great read for me has a lot to do with just the overall richness when it comes to the Nigerian setting and the various villages. Comes to most certainly to the main protagonist, as this is told in the first person. Most certainly to him, as we watch him grow and develop, as we watch him express his desires, his disappointments, as we watch him most certainly try to do different little jobs to try to bring his family much further up out of the caste system. He one minute he goes out to Lagos to become a boxer. That doesn't work out. Well, to be pushed as a boxer, but that doesn't work out. So he has to escape that situation. Another situation, he works as a migrant worker. Another situation where he finally gets to go to school to further his education due to the financial sacrifice of his mother and his father. That doesn't pan out too well. So he has to make some much more adjustments to try to get the education that he desires. So love that. Love the richness when it comes to the cultural references, because there are a plenty here. I love that the author dug right into it. There was no flinching of it. There was no total explanation to the reader of what certain cultural significance meant. I thought somebody was walking down the street when it comes to what these people, down to what they ate, down to what they believed. There was also a lot of political aspects to this particular story where our main protagonist was getting involved with this political group. Just a host of different things. And like I said, the author didn't spend or waste a lot of time explaining or examining these things to the reader. You kind of had to just kind of hold on to it, grip it, and believe it as you went along with the main protagonist, discovering who he is or who he wanted to be throughout the entirety of the story. So The Liquid Eye of the Moon was fantastic. Interspersed between his particular story, there were these chapters where you were looking into like the roots of his particular family lineage, heritage, why his particular family is cursed, quote unquote cursed. At first you probably won't gather what they mean, what those chapters mean, but as you progress the story and you realize that this particular, I keep using that word, but as you realize this main protagonist, he wants to be a writer, you come to assume that those were little notes that he was writing that were addressing the possibility of becoming a book where he chronicles his family's history. So the Liquid Eye of the Moon was amazing. And I'm so glad that I waited to read this, because I was like, let me just go look and see if there's anything that came out. This author's releasing another book later on this year. So it's perfect timing. God be having me on some of these books. I don't read them all on time, but sometimes God be like, I know what you need. I know how to do you in this. So the next book that I tried to read, keyword, was Geoffrey Household's Rogue Mail, which I already explained to you guys, had to do with this fairly unassuming, fairly plain Jane man in Britain who is using a rifle with a scope to go hunt Hitler, or a German. We'll leave it at that. But the point is that he ends up being thwarted in his quest. You really don't know if he's doing it just to do it, hunting just to hunt, just for having a big game, for his own ego, or if he's some kind of spy. There's a lot of assumptions and unassuming and presumptions and all those things in between. But it's told in the first person, picking up where he left off in terms of him being thrown down a cliff by this oppositional force that's trying to stop him, and then him crawling up and saving himself, etc., etc. I got about 60 pages into this book and I DNF'd it. Like I said, I'm very clear. I'm very clear and honest with y'all when I say that some books work, some don't. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. There's plenty of other books that I'm excited to read, and if something doesn't work, it doesn't work. Mainly, this didn't work for me because I just could not build a connection with the main protagonist. I just couldn't get a clear visual of him, of his intentions, of the motives. The author was asking me to believe in something that I just couldn't quite follow, because he himself, written in the first person, there was that unreliability of what exactly was his role. Was he really a spy? Was he really just a gentleman who happened to be looking for big game? Just nothing. It just wasn't connecting. And I knew that I wasn't interested in this book any further, because I was often turning on the PS5 instead. When I know that I'm in the middle of reading and I just turn on the gaming system, or I just, I don't know, go put on a load of clothes or something, then I know that I'm not interested. So unfortunately, Road Mail, I don't have anything else to say other than I had to DNF it. I just wasn't interested. My interest waned very, very much. So I'm currently reading, which I started yesterday, the Polish book by Maryla, excuse me. I'm not gonna even pronounce that last name, but it's this couple here that I mentioned. Miss Mohr Goes Missing, which is the first book in their Zofia Turbotinska series about this wealthy socialite in Poland who does a lot of charity work, or she's trying to. One of the main things, one of her main agendas, because her husband is a professor, a doctor and a professor at a university, she wants to bring him further up within the class system herself, and that involves her operating in charity circles with other women, other wealthy socialite women, to kind of raise the name of their particular family. In this case, she does some charity work for this community of elderly people residing within this building, where nuns are watching over them. A bit of a convalescence, but not quite. And one of the ladies end up going missing, and they end up finding her deceased in the attic. Where I'm at the point where there isn't any clarity on if she was murdered, but she's definitely was found deceased. But on top of that, I'm at the point also where another individual has been found and it's clearly been murdered. So I'm about 100 pages into this book. And when we look at total interest and opposition, this one is pulling me in. This one is definitely pulling me in. Like when I got up this morning, I made me a cup of coffee. I sat on my reading chair and just knocked out 50 pages because I was that so absorbed within this book. Now I can't say I gathered everything given that this takes place in Poland during the, what is this, 1893. So they're speaking about things like, what they call it, a yellow region, a yellow dress. It was some kind of dress she was talking about wearing. Oh gosh, but my point is all those little references to certain things, but then that particular time, it feels a little bit demanding that time because I'm always looking on my phone like, okay, let me try to get a visual of what they're speaking about. But other than that, I'm enjoying this book. So I really don't have a lot to say because I'm in the middle of it. And that's kind of it. That's where I'm at with March Mystery Madness. I am doing the best that I can. But I'm definitely here to tell you where I'm at. I'm here to tell you where I'm at. I'm doing the best I can, but I'm here to tell you where I'm at. And y'all know when I say something, a book don't work for me, I will come up here and tell you it does not work and why. Okay? So that's just kind of it. So let me know what you guys are reading and if your March Mystery Madness is going well. And I keep looking out there because somebody's balloon just flew up into that electrical thing there. And I hope that's not connected to where I'm at.